A single act of kindness from a stranger changed a struggling waitress's life forever, proving that one person noticing you can open doors you never imagined. The diner buzzed with the usual lunchtime chaos. Plates clattered, orders were shouted, and the smell of fresh coffee mixed with sizzling bacon filled the air. Among the clatter and chatter moved a young woman named Emily. She was a waitress who had spent years perfecting the art of balancing trays, remembering orders and keeping her customers happy even on the busiest days. Her uniform was simple, slightly worn, but she wore it with pride. Every day, she faced the same routine: long hours, demanding customers, and the constant worry about making enough to cover her bills. Emily had grown up in a small town, and her family had never been wealthy. Her parents worked hard, and she had learned from an early age that nothing came easily. She was determined, honest, and always polite, but life had a way of testing her patience. This day was like any other, filled with the familiar rhythm of taking orders, refilling coffee cups, and delivering meals with a smile. Even when her feet ached and her stomach growled, she loved working with people, even if it didn't pay as much as she hoped. As she moved from table to table, Emily noticed a man sitting quietly in the corner of the diner. He was dressed in an expensive-looking suit, but there was something calm and approachable about him. Unlike most of the other customers, he didn't look rushed or impatient. He simply observed the room, occasionally glancing at the menu but mostly watching everything around him. Emily didn't pay much attention at first. She was too busy juggling orders and ensuring that the small chaos of the diner flowed smoothly. But there was something different about this man. He didn't behave like other people who came to the diner. He didn't demand immediate attention, complain about the food, or scowl when the coffee wasn't exactly how he wanted it. Instead, he watched with quiet curiosity, almost like he was studying the people and the place. Emily found herself glancing his way from time to time, wondering what could have brought someone like him to this humble diner. The lunch rush continued, with Emily darting between tables, balancing plates filled with sandwiches, burgers, and fries. She had learned to move quickly without spilling, but it wasn't easy. Her muscles ached, and her back protested. But she pushed on. Every tip mattered, every smile counted, and she knew that one good day could help her get a little closer to her goals. She dreamed of going back to school someday, maybe even traveling, but for now, her focus was survival. The man in the corner occasionally made small gestures, a nod of appreciation when she refilled his coffee, a quiet thank you when she cleared his empty plate. At first, Emily thought it was just politeness, but then she noticed something strange. He seemed genuinely interested in how she worked, in how she treated the customers, and in her overall energy. He wasn't looking at the food, the decor, or the prices. He was looking at her. Emily didn't let it distract her at first. She had learned long ago to ignore staring or attention that made her uncomfortable. But there was something different here. He didn't make her uneasy. Instead, it made her feel noticed in a way she hadn't experienced before. Most days, she felt invisible, like she was just part of the background of people's lives. But today, she realized someone was paying attention to her effort, her care, and her dedication. During a brief lull in the rush, Emily took a moment to breathe and straighten her apron. She wiped her hands on a towel and walked over to his table to ask if he wanted anything else. He looked up and smiled, a small, genuine smile that made her heart skip a little. "Everything has been wonderful, thank you," he said. "You're very good at what you do." Emily felt a flush of embarrassment and gratitude. Compliments were rare in her job, especially from strangers. She nodded and said, "Thank you, I tried my best." She moved on, but his words lingered in her mind. All day, she found herself thinking about the quiet man in the corner, wondering who he was and why he seemed to notice her so much. It was unusual for her to feel this kind of recognition. Most customers were too busy with their own meals, conversations, or phones to pay attention to anyone else. But this man had noticed her, not just her work, but her effort, her patience, and her attitude. The rest of the lunch rush passed in a blur. Emily took orders, refilled drinks, and apologized for slow service when the kitchen got backed up. She smiled through it all, motivated by the thought that someone had seen her, really seen her in the middle of the chaos. By the time the last customer left and the diner quieted down, she was exhausted, her feet sore. But her spirit strangely lifted as she cleaned a table near where the man had been sitting. Emily noticed he was gone. She felt a little pang of disappointment, hoping she might see him again. But then she saw something on the table, a folded note. Curious, she picked it up and unfolded it carefully. The note was brief, written in neat handwriting. You have something special. Keep working hard. Good things will find you. There was no signature, only a small symbol she didn't recognize. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she held the note. She couldn't believe it. Someone had noticed her in a way that mattered, enough to leave a message that seemed personal and thoughtful. She read it over and over, trying to make sense of it. Was it real? Did he mean it? Her mind raced with possibilities, but one thing was clear. She had never felt such a mixture of surprise, joy, and hope in her life. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt like maybe things could change. Maybe her hard work, her dedication, and her quiet persistence were not invisible after all. She looked around the empty diner, imagining the man in the corner, and felt a spark of possibility. It was a small gesture, just a note, but it was enough to shift something inside her. She smiled to herself, feeling lighter than she had in months. That evening, Emily closed up the diner, wiped down the counters, and hung her apron on the hook. She thought about the note again and tried to imagine who the man could be. His presence, calm and observing, had made a bigger impact than she expected. She felt a strange excitement, a sense that her life might not stay the same for long. For the first time in a while, she went home feeling a quiet thrill of anticipation, thinking that maybe, just maybe, the universe had noticed her too, even as she lay in bed that night, exhausted from the long day. Emily couldn't stop thinking about the unexpected kindness she had received. She didn't know who the man really was, and she didn't know if she would ever see him again. But she knew one thing. Someone had recognized her worth, and that small recognition had already begun to change her. The next morning, Emily woke up still thinking about the note. She had read it countless times, memorizing every word. Something about it made her feel alive in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. She got ready for work, tying her hair back and putting on her worn apron, but her mind was somewhere else. The thought of the man in the corner, the way he had observed her calmly and left that message, lingered in her mind. It was as if someone out there had seen her in a way that truly mattered. At the diner, things were busier than usual. The morning rush brought in a mix of regulars and new faces. Emily moved from table to table with practiced efficiency, taking orders, refilling coffee, and managing small requests. Yet, despite the familiar chaos, her mood was brighter. The note had given her a small spark of hope. She noticed herself smiling more, speaking a little more warmly to her customers, and carrying herself with a new confidence. Some of the regulars even commented on it. One older man said, "You're glowing today, Emily. Something good must have happened." She simply laughed and nodded, not ready to explain. The quiet man returned to the diner that afternoon. Emily noticed him immediately as he walked in, calm and unhurried, just like before. He didn't come right up to her or announce himself. He simply chose a table near the window and opened a newspaper. Emily felt her heart race. She wasn't sure why, but she knew that his presence meant something important. She took a deep breath and continued her work, moving quickly from table to table, yet glancing at him when she could. This time, when she brought his order, he looked up and smiled. "I hope everything is to your liking," Emily said, slightly nervous. His smile was warm, encouraging, and somehow comforting. "It is," he replied. "Thank you." His voice was calm, steady, and there was something in it that made Emily feel understood. She didn't know why, but she felt that he wasn't just saying polite words. He meant them. As she went back to the kitchen, she couldn't stop thinking about the way he had looked at her the day before, the note he had left, and the genuine attention he seemed to give. Most customers barely noticed her, and many treated the waitstaff like invisible background. But this man had seen her, really seen her. It was an unfamiliar, almost magical feeling, and it made her want to do better, to show the best version of herself without knowing exactly why. The lunch rush began. Emily moved quickly between tables. Yet, she kept catching glimpses of him watching her. There was no judgment in his eyes, no impatience, only quiet observation. It was strange and comforting at the same time. She noticed how calm he seemed, unaffected by the noise and chaos around him. Emily wondered what it was about her that had caught his attention. She had always worked hard, but she never expected someone of his apparent wealth and status to even notice her existence, let alone leave a note praising her dedication. After a while, the diner quieted down, and Emily had a brief moment to catch her breath. The man looked up from his newspaper and motioned her over. Her heart skipped a beat as she approached, unsure what to expect. "I wanted to tell you," he began, "that you have a rare quality. Not many people take their work with the kind of care and attention that you do. It's obvious in the way you treat your customers." Emily blinked, unsure how to respond. Compliments like this were so rare that she didn't know what to say. "Thank you," she finally managed. I try my best," nodded. "And that shows. People notice, even when they don't say it. You have a spark that most people overlook, but I didn't." His words made her pause. She had spent years feeling invisible, struggling to make ends meet. And here was someone who wasn't just noticing her, but appreciating her in a way that felt deeply personal. Emily tried to keep her composure, but a small smile crept across her face. I really appreciate that," she said softly. She felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of gratitude, disbelief, and a hint of excitement. Could someone like him really see her in such a genuine way? She didn't understand why, but she knew it mattered more than she could put into words. The man leaned back slightly and studied her for a moment. "I have a question for you," he said. "Do you ever feel like you're capable of more than your current situation allows? Like you have potential that hasn't been fully realized?" Emily's heart raced. She had always felt that way, but it was rare to hear someone articulate it so clearly, and even rarer for someone to actually seem interested. She nodded slowly. "Yes, I sometimes feel like I could do more, but I don't know how or where to start." He smiled gently. "That's why I'm here. I want to help you see what you're capable of. Not everyone gets this opportunity, but you have something that's rare, and I'd like to give you a chance to explore it." Emily felt a mixture of shock, disbelief, and excitement. She wanted to speak, but the words seemed to stick in her throat. "A chance?" she whispered, barely audible. "Yes," he said. "I don't usually do this, but something about your attitude and your dedication makes me believe that you could do amazing things if given the right guidance and support. I can help you get started." Emily's mind raced. Could this be real? A stranger, someone powerful and influential, offering her a chance she had never imagined? She felt like she was dreaming. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Emily barely noticed the orders she was taking or the customers she was serving. Her thoughts were consumed with the possibility of what this could mean for her life. She replayed the man's words over and over, trying to make sense of the situation. She felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. Fear because this was completely new and unfamiliar, and excitement because it represented a chance for something more than she had ever dared to hope for. By the time the diner closed, Emily was exhausted, but she felt a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. She carefully cleaned her section, wiped down the tables, and hung her apron with trembling hands. The man had left before closing time, but his presence lingered like a quiet promise. Emily couldn't stop thinking about the conversation, the way he had noticed her, and the unexpected opportunity he had offered at home. She sat at the kitchen table, the note from the previous day still in her hand. She stared at it and smiled, realizing that her life might be about to change in ways she could never have imagined. She imagined what it would be like to step outside the small world she had always known, to explore her potential with guidance from someone who believed in her. The thought was thrilling and terrifying all at once. Emily went to bed that night with her mind racing. She couldn't stop thinking about the man, the note, and the words he had spoken. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope that couldn't be ignored. She realized that sometimes life changes in ways you never expect, and that a single person's attention and belief could open doors she had never even seen as she drifted off to sleep. Emily imagined herself stepping into a new world, one filled with opportunities, challenges, and possibilities she had never dared to dream of. She didn't know what was coming next, but she felt ready to face it. And deep down, she knew that this quiet man, the one who had noticed her and offered her a chance, had already started to change her life in ways she could barely understand. Her heart was filled with anticipation, hope, and a little bit of fear. But above all, she felt enlivened. That feeling alone was enough to keep her awake, with dreams of what might be waiting for her just around the corner. Emily woke up the next morning with a mixture of excitement and nervousness she had never felt before. The conversation with the man in the diner replayed in her mind over and over. His words, calm yet powerful, seemed to echo in her chest. "You have something rare. I want to help you see what you're capable of." She couldn't stop thinking about what this opportunity could mean, yet she also felt the tiniest flutter of fear. Change was unknown, and she had spent most of her life in routines that were safe, even if small and limiting, as she got ready for work. Emily's movements felt different that day. She tied her hair with extra care, smoothed out her apron, and even gave herself a small pep talk in the mirror. "You can do this," she whispered. She didn't know exactly what this was yet, but she felt a determination building inside her. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't just going through the motions. She was preparing herself for something bigger. When Emily arrived at the diner, it was busy as usual. She jumped straight into her routine, taking orders, refilling drinks, and making sure every customer felt seen. But she couldn't help glancing toward the corner where the man sometimes sat. He wasn't there yet, but the thought of meeting him again filled her with a strange mixture of anticipation and anxiety. She had spent her life serving others and rarely thinking about what opportunities might come to her. Now someone had seen her value, and she didn't want to mess it up. By mid-morning, the diner had calmed slightly, and Emily found herself helping. A young boy reached his high chair and laughing with an elderly couple who came in for their regular coffee. She noticed that she had a new energy that made her more patient and attentive. The customers responded to it. Some complimented her, and a few even seemed drawn to her cheerful demeanor. She realized that confidence had a way of spreading, and suddenly, the work that usually felt exhausting began to feel meaningful. Then, just as she was clearing a table, the man walked in. He seemed almost casual, yet his presence filled the diner. Emily felt her stomach tighten, but she forced herself to keep calm and smile. He nodded at her politely before taking a seat near the window, just like before. Emily's hands shook slightly as she took his order and brought it to him. His expression was calm, encouraging, and familiar. "You seem different today," he said quietly, looking up from his coffee. "There's a light in you that wasn't here yesterday." Emily blushed and looked away for a moment. "I guess I've been thinking a lot," she admitted softly. He nodded knowingly. "Good," he said. "Thinking is the first step toward action. I'm glad you're ready to take the next step." Emily felt her heart race. She had spent years dreaming quietly about a better life, about opportunities she thought she could never reach. And now, someone was offering her the chance to do something she had only imagined. She wanted to ask questions, to understand what this meant, but words felt small compared to the reality of the moment. Over the next few days, the man began guiding Emily in small ways. He didn't overwhelm her or rush her. Instead, he gave her advice, introduced ideas, and gently encouraged her to consider her own strengths and potential. He asked about her dreams, listened carefully, and offered suggestions she never thought possible. For Emily, these conversations were like discovering a hidden map to a world she had always wanted to explore, but had never known how to enter. Emily also began to notice changes in herself. She started thinking more boldly, considering possibilities she had dismissed before. Small decisions at the diner, how she handled a difficult customer, how she organized her tasks, how she interacted with coworkers, felt more intentional and confident. She realized that she was capable of more than she had ever allowed herself to believe. Her coworkers began to notice too. Some were curious about the subtle change in her demeanor. Others teased her lightly, saying, "Who's been putting ideas in your head?" Emily laughed it off, but felt quietly proud. For the first time, she understood that change often started within. She didn't need to wait for someone else's approval, though having guidance certainly helped. One afternoon, the man asked Emily to meet him outside the diner. Nervously, she followed him to a small office building downtown. It wasn't flashy or intimidating, just simple and professional. Inside, he introduced her to a few people who worked with him: mentors, advisors, and professionals who could help her develop skills she had only dreamed of. Emily felt overwhelmed, but inspired. The opportunity was real, and it was happening because she had shown dedication, kindness, and a willingness to learn. He gave her a small project to start with, something manageable but meaningful. Emily worked on it with care, learning quickly and asking questions. Every step of the process made her more confident and aware of her own abilities. For the first time in years, she felt like she was not just surviving, but growing, improving, and contributing in ways that mattered. Even with all the excitement, there were moments of doubt. Emily sometimes questioned whether she was ready, whether she deserved this chance, or whether she might fail. But each time she felt fear, she remembered the man's words: "You have something rare. You can do this." Those words became a quiet mantra that pushed her forward. She realized that fear was part of growth, not a signal to stop. As weeks passed, Emily's life began to shift. Her perspective changed, and she started seeing opportunities where she once saw obstacles. She learned new skills, discovered talent she hadn't realized she had, and felt more capable than ever before. The diner remained a part of her life, but it no longer defined her. She had begun a new journey, one guided by her own potential and supported by someone who believed in her at home. Emily would often sit quietly, reflecting on the changes. She realized that her life had already started to transform, even in small ways. Her confidence grew, her dreams became clearer, and she began planning for a future that had once seemed impossible. She understood that this was just the beginning. The attention and guidance she received from the man were opening doors, but it was her hard work, dedication, and willingness to take risks that would carry her forward. One evening, after a long day of learning and working on her project, Emily sat by her window and thought about how far she had come. She remembered the small note he had left in the diner, the kind words he had spoken, and the opportunities he had presented. What had seemed like a simple gesture had turned into a chain of events that was reshaping her entire life. Emily realized that change often comes unexpectedly. Sometimes it appears as a quiet observer in a corner, sometimes as a small note or a few kind words. And sometimes it comes as an opportunity that seems too big to be real. But when she looked at herself now, she understood that she was ready. She had the courage, the skill, and the determination to take this chance and turn it into something meaningful. The days ahead felt full of possibilities. Emily knew there would be challenges, moments of doubt, and difficult decisions. But she also knew that she had begun a journey that could take her farther than she had ever dreamed. With each step, she was learning, growing, and building a life that reflected her true potential. And deep down, she felt a quiet sense of gratitude for the man who had noticed her, believed in her, and opened the door to a future she could now see. Emily went to bed that night feeling a sense of calm excitement. Her life was no longer just about surviving day to day. It was about moving forward, exploring opportunities, and discovering who she could truly become. She understood that her journey was just beginning, and for the first time, she was eager to see what awaited her. The spark that had been lit in the diner was now aflame, guiding her toward a future filled with hope, growth, and possibilities she had never dared to imagine. Emily's new life wasn't without its challenges. The excitement of opportunity and guidance from the man who had noticed her still filled her days. But reality had a way of reminding her that change wasn't always easy. Some mornings, she woke up with a sense of doubt, wondering if she was really capable of stepping into a bigger world. Old fears crept in. What if she failed? What if she wasn't ready? Or worse, what if she lost this rare chance she had been given? At the diner, she still worked her shifts, but her mind was often divided between serving customers and thinking about the projects and lessons she had begun outside of work. She noticed the small differences in her daily routine, how she now approached problems with more patience, how she solved conflicts more calmly, and how she began to anticipate needs rather than simply react. It felt strange to be both learning and working, but she discovered that the effort was teaching her resilience, patience, and creativity. Her coworkers began to notice her transformation too. Some were genuinely impressed by her new confidence, while others were skeptical or even envious. A few joked about how she suddenly had an attitude or asked if someone had been giving her special attention. Emily smiled politely and didn't explain. She understood that people often questioned what they didn't see or understand, and she had learned to let their opinions slide without affecting her focus. The man continued to guide her, providing small challenges that stretched her abilities. One day, he asked her to prepare a presentation on a concept she had never worked with before. At first, Emily felt panic rising in her chest. She had never done anything like this in her life. But he reassured her gently, "I'm here to help. You have the skills. You just need to trust yourself." That night, Emily stayed up late, researching, writing, and practicing. Her hands grew tired, her eyes strained, but with every page she wrote, she felt herself gaining strength and confidence. The next day, she presented her work. She stumbled a few times, nerves making her voice shake, but she finished. The man smiled at her warmly. "See, you're capable of more than you thought. Every step like this will make you stronger." Emily felt a rush of pride. The fear hadn't disappeared, but she realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was pushing forward despite it. Despite the support, challenges kept coming. There were moments when she felt overwhelmed, unsure if she could balance her diner job, her new learning, and her growing responsibilities. Bills still needed to be paid, and family obligations remained. Some days, exhaustion weighed heavily on her, and she doubted whether she could handle it all. But each time, she reminded herself why she had started this journey and how far she had already come. Emily also began to face personal doubts. She questioned whether she deserved this attention and these opportunities. She had grown up believing that people like her didn't get noticed by powerful or influential individuals. Could she really belong in this new world? Every time she wondered, the man's quiet encouragement came back to her mind. "You have something rare. You are capable. Keep going." His belief in her slowly became a lifeline, a reminder that her own self-doubt didn't define her worth. Slowly, Emily began to see the results of her hard work. Projects she completed received positive feedback. She started to feel a sense of accomplishment that had been missing from her life. Each small success built her confidence and reinforced her determination to continue. She noticed changes in her demeanor. Her posture was straighter, her voice firmer, her smile steadier. She felt more prepared to handle the challenges that life threw at her. Even with progress, Emily encountered resistance from unexpected places. Some friends and acquaintances didn't understand her sudden growth and questioned her intentions. A few implied that she had changed too much or that her dreams were unrealistic. Emily listened, but she didn't let their words shake her. She realized that growth often attracts doubt and envy, and that staying true to herself was more important than seeking approval from others. During this period, Emily also learned the value of patience. Not every lesson or opportunity produced immediate results. Some days she felt like she was moving slowly or even stumbling backward, but she began to understand that transformation was a gradual process, built on consistent effort, resilience, and the courage to keep moving forward even when results weren't visible. She learned to celebrate small victories and view setbacks as temporary challenges rather than failures. The man's mentorship became a guiding light during this time. He taught her to think strategically, plan ahead, and anticipate challenges before they arose. He encouraged her to take risks, reminding her that mistakes weren't proof of failure, but stepping stones to growth. Emily learned to trust her instincts, make decisions confidently, and embrace opportunities she might have once avoided. Each lesson shaped her into a more capable, self-assured person. Emily also began to notice the impact her growth had on others. Her family saw her newfound confidence and determination, and they began to respect her efforts and vision. Her coworkers, once skeptical, started seeking her advice and input. Even the diner's regular customers noticed a difference, remarking on her positive energy and professionalism. These small acknowledgments reinforced the reality that her transformation was genuine and noticeable. One particularly challenging day, Emily faced a setback that tested her resolve. A project she had spent hours preparing did not go as planned. She received critical feedback from someone she respected. Her heart sank, and for a moment she felt the old weight of doubt and fear pressing down on her. But she remembered the man's words, "Every challenge is a lesson. Use it to grow." She took a deep breath, analyzed the feedback, and worked on improving her approach. By the end of the week, she had turned the setback into a learning opportunity, strengthening her skills and confidence. Through all these experiences, Emily began to internalize an important truth. Transformation was not about avoiding difficulty, but about embracing it. She realized that her courage, resilience, and willingness to learn were shaping her into a person capable of handling far more than she had ever imagined. Each obstacle became a stepping stone, a chance to reaffirm her determination. By the end of this period, Emily's life had changed significantly. She no longer felt like a small, invisible figure in a vast world. She had begun to step into her potential, guided by mentorship and fueled by her own perseverance. She knew that the road ahead would continue to have challenges, but she felt prepared to face them with confidence and determination. As she walked home one evening, Emily thought about how far she had come. The note in the diner, the kind words, and the opportunity she had been given had started a chain reaction in her life. She realized that true growth often required facing fears, accepting guidance, and embracing change with courage. And in that moment, she felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the man who had noticed her, but for her own willingness to step forward and seize the chance to become more than she had ever imagined. Emily went to bed that night with a sense of quiet pride. Her life was not perfect, and challenges remained. But she knew she was evolving into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable. The doubts that had once held her back were still present, but they no longer controlled her. She had begun to master the balance between effort and patience, risk and confidence, growth and resilience. Her journey was far from over. But Emily understood that she had already achieved something remarkable. She had discovered her own potential, faced her fears, and begun to create a life that reflected her true abilities. And as she drifted off to sleep, she felt ready to meet the next chapter, knowing that every challenge, every setback, and every small victory was a part of the transformation that was reshaping her life in ways she had never dreamed possible. The mornings at the diner had started to feel different for Emily, even though she still worked her shifts. They no longer defined her. Every plate she carried, every coffee she poured, and every customer she served was a reminder of how far she had come. The same girl who once felt invisible and overwhelmed now moved with confidence, a quiet assurance that came from months of learning, growing, and pushing herself beyond her comfort zone. Her relationship with the man who had first noticed her had also deepened. He continued to mentor her, but now their interactions were less about introductions and guidance and more about real collaboration. He had started including her in larger projects, giving her responsibilities that once would have seemed impossible. Emily often found herself brainstorming, problem-solving, and making decisions with a level of clarity and authority she had never experienced before. Each day brought new lessons, and each lesson strengthened her belief in herself. One afternoon, the man invited Emily to a meeting that was unlike anything she had attended before. The room was filled with professionals discussing a major project, and at first, Emily felt a twinge of nervousness. She wasn't sure she belonged here. But as the discussion unfolded, she realized her ideas and insights were valuable. She spoke confidently, sharing her perspective, and for the first time, she experienced the thrill of being taken seriously in a space where her voice truly mattered. The feeling was intoxicating, and a quiet smile of satisfaction crossed her face. Weeks passed, and Emily continued to rise to the challenges placed before her. She learned to manage multiple responsibilities, communicate effectively, and make important decisions under pressure. Her confidence grew with every success, no matter how small. People began to notice the change in her. From coworkers at the diner to professionals in the larger circles she had begun entering. Respect, encouragement, and genuine acknowledgement replaced skepticism and doubt. Emily realized that her transformation was not just internal, it was visible to everyone around her. One evening, after a long day of work and meetings, Emily returned home feeling a sense of accomplishment that was entirely new. She sat quietly at her kitchen table, reflecting on how far she had come. She thought back to the note left in the diner months ago, to the first conversation with the man who had seen her potential, and to the moments of doubt that she had overcome. Each memory was a reminder of the journey she had taken. A journey that had begun with a simple recognition of her worth and had grown into a life she had never imagined possible. Emily's family noticed the changes too. Her parents and siblings saw her confidence, her ambition, and the way she carried herself. They could see that she was no longer simply surviving, but thriving. They asked questions about her work, her learning, and her new opportunities. Emily shared what she could, careful not to overwhelm them with the details, but their pride in her was clear. It was a moment of connection and affirmation, showing her that the changes in her life were not only affecting her personally, but also touching those who loved her, her friends. Too began to take notice. Some were inspired by her transformation, asking how they could follow her example. Others expressed surprise, unable to comprehend how someone from her background could achieve such progress so quickly. Emily didn't take offense. She understood that growth often challenges the expectations of those around us. She smiled, knowing that her journey was hers alone, shaped by her effort, her courage, and the guidance of someone who had believed in her from the start. One day, the man called her with an invitation that filled her with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He wanted her to present one of her projects to a larger audience, including people she had previously thought were far beyond her reach. Emily felt her heart race, but she also felt a quiet confidence. She had prepared, practiced, and learned enough to know that she could handle this. This was the moment she had been building toward. The opportunity to step fully into her new life. The day of the presentation arrived. Emily walked into the room with a steady pace, her notes in hand and her mind focused. As she spoke, she felt a sense of power and clarity she had never experienced before. Her ideas were met with interest and respect. Questions were asked, and she answered confidently, drawing on the skills and knowledge she had developed over the past months. By the end of the presentation, the room was filled with nods, smiles, and applause. Emily's heart soared. This was proof that she could not only participate in a world she had once thought inaccessible, but also excel within it. After the presentation, the man approached her with a proud smile. "You've come so far," he said quietly. "I always knew you could do this, but seeing it happen is incredible." Emily felt a wave of gratitude and relief. She realized that the journey had been about more than guidance. It had been about her willingness to learn, adapt, and grow. The man's belief in her had sparked the change, but her courage and effort had carried it forward. Emily began to notice that her perspective on life had shifted permanently. Challenges no longer seemed insurmountable. Doubts no longer held her back. She had developed resilience, self-confidence, and a sense of purpose that allowed her to navigate both personal and professional situations with grace and determination. Every obstacle became an opportunity to learn. Every setback a chance to strengthen herself. The diner, once the center of her world, now felt like a place she had outgrown in some ways. Yet it remained a grounding force. She still worked there occasionally, enjoying the familiar faces and rhythms, but she no longer felt limited by it. Instead, she saw it as a stepping stone, a foundation that had prepared her for the life she was building. She carried the lessons of patience, hard work, and kindness from her time as a waitress into every new challenge she faced. Emily also discovered the joy of helping others. As she grew, she began mentoring people around her, sharing her experiences, encouraging them to see their own potential, and reminding them that small gestures of support and belief can change lives. She remembered vividly how the simple act of someone noticing her had transformed everything. That memory became a guiding principle in her interactions with others, to recognize effort, encourage growth, and provide opportunities wherever possible. As months turned into a year, Emily's life had transformed almost completely. She had grown professionally, gained confidence, and developed a sense of purpose and direction she had never known before. She had faced challenges, doubts, and setbacks, but each had strengthened her resolve. She had learned that true change comes from combining opportunity with courage, guidance with persistence, and belief with action. One quiet evening, Emily found herself reflecting on her journey. She thought about the note left on the diner table months ago. The first conversation with the man, the early days of learning and struggle, and the challenges she had overcome. Each memory was a reminder of how far she had come and how much she had grown. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the opportunities and guidance she had received, but for her own determination and courage to embrace change. Her life was no longer defined by limitations, the fear of being invisible. She had discovered her potential, stepped into opportunities she had never imagined, and transformed into a person capable of achieving remarkable things. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every step. Emily knew that the future would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew she had the skills, confidence, and resilience to face them. In the quiet of that evening, Emily smiled to herself, feeling a sense of peace and excitement for what was to come. She understood that life could change in unexpected ways, and that a single act of recognition, belief, or support could alter a person's path forever. Her journey from a humble waitress to a confident, capable, and empowered woman was a testament to the power of opportunity, determination, and belief. Emily realized that she had not only changed her own life, but had also gained the ability to inspire and impact others. She could now look at the world with hope, ambition, and courage, knowing that she was capable of achieving her dreams. The girl who once felt invisible had become someone who shined with confidence, purpose, and the knowledge that her life could be whatever she chose it to be. And as she looked out the window that evening, Emily felt a quiet sense of triumph. Her life had been forever changed, not just by the opportunities she had been given, but by her willingness to embrace them fully. She had learned that true transformation is a combination of belief, action, perseverance, and the courage to step into the unknown. She had started as a waitress, unnoticed and uncertain, and had grown into a woman who had discovered her strength, her purpose, and her remarkable potential. Her journey was a reminder that sometimes the simplest acts, being seen, being encouraged, being believed in, can ignite the spark that changes everything. Emily understood that she had been given a rare gift. She had nurtured it into a life filled with possibility, achievement, and hope. And for the first time in her life, she truly felt unstoppable.